Hello everybody and welcome to another watercolor tutorial. Today we're going to be painting this beautiful winter scene. So as you can see, I've already just lightly sketched out some very rough guidelines for myself of where I'm going to have different things. So this here is going to be a river. This is going to be kind of like a wintry fieldy landscape, and then we'll have a nice sunset with trees in the background. So you can very roughly kind of copy what I have here, or you can follow your own guidelines from the internet. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create the background sunset, and also I'm going to reflect that onto the little river that we're going to have running here. So we're going to be using some yellow colors, a little bit of pink maybe, a nude, and then we're gonna end with a nice blue. I really should have cleaned this before I started. I just get a little bit lazy sometimes. Okay. So my little river is almost connecting to the horizon there, so that's why I'm adding a little bit of yellow there. And we are going to adjust this a little bit later on, so don't worry about being very super accurate. There we go. Let me know if you like these live real-time tutorials, or live in the sense that I'm talking into the camera. It's definitely something new for me, a lot to get used to, but I'll tell you that I really enjoy less editing because I don't have to edit and record a voiceover after I finished filming my video, so it's actually quite a bit easier for me to do it this way. But it's also a little bit more high stress because I have to make sure that I'm, mentioning all the little details while I'm painting. So I'm just fading the yellow into a pink and then perhaps a little bit of an orange. I'm also going to add like a grayish blue on the side here, since we're going to be painting some trees and kind of whitish blue hues there. So see, this sketchbook is not 100% cotton, so the paint dries a little bit too quickly for my liking. It's a great sketchbook. I really do like it, but if I could change one thing, I would have cotton. But that is an expensive luxury. Okay, so here you can see we kind of defined our background, and we've reflected that onto the little pond thing, or the little river that we have running here. So now I kind of forgot that I'm gonna have this little whitish blue patch over here, so I'm just kind of taking off a little bit of the watercolor just on this right patch over here and replacing it with a little bit of like a bluish gray tone. You can see here that it's kind of slightly cauliflowering, but that's okay because we're going to go over this with another layer. There we go. Okay. So I do want some more intense yellows over here. So I'm just going to paint those in now, making sure to reflect that onto my river. So here I'm just making my colors a lot more prominent and intense because we do want our sunrise to look very, very intense, and I want it to pop off the page because we're going to have a lot of white and blue values in here. So by the way, it's okay if your background doesn't look exactly like mine. The point is to have fun and experiment with colors and whatnot. And I found in the past when I was following, when I was learning and I was following a lot of people's tutorials, I actually found that the way that I did things, sometimes I improvised. I liked how it looked a lot better than the original. So please don't feel like you have to stick to exactly what I'm doing. You can experiment, you can add a different color if you like it more than the colors that I'm using. That's kind of the whole point of watercolor. That's why I love watercolor, because it's so easy to experiment and combine colors and various, you know, combinations and so on. So just keep that in mind while you're painting. So when this dries, it's going to be a lot easier to add, you know, more intense details, but you can add a little bit of streaking. I don't really know what to call this, to be honest, but I'm just taking orange watercolor and kind of moving my paintbrush very rapidly and just barely touching the paper. And this is creating kind of this line effect, because I want it to look like the sun, or whatever point is brightest, which is around here, is reflecting onto the water. And I'm going to just lift off some color as well, because I want some white accents to be visible. So what I'm doing here is I'm just lifting off the paint, and then I'm running my paintbrush on a paper towel to just get rid of the excess paint. And then I'm just repeating that process until I am happy with how it looks. So while that is drying, we're just going to create the snowbanks now. So we're going to be using some gray and blue hues to achieve this look, and just make sure it's extremely watered down because you want it to be very faint. So I want there to be sort of a snowbank over here. So I'm just going to paint on some darker brush strokes over here. So sort of like this. Add a little bit of blue in there. Oop, that, too much blue. Take that away. There's no like real technique to this. I'm just sort of making random brush strokes to make it look like there's snow, or there's some sort of that it's not just a blank white page. So just keep that in mind. I'm just going to make this bottom left portion a little bit darker as well, just because we're going to have trees here and here. So I want to reflect the shadows, I suppose, of the trees in a very subtle way. So I'm just creating a darker spot in this corner here. So we're going to be painting very gentle lines here to insinuate trees, or we are going to be painting trees, I suppose. So I sort of had a combination of brown, black, and gray watercolor, and I just am painting. See, you can see my background isn't fully dry because it's slightly bleeding out here. That's okay, it's not a super big deal, but if you want to prevent that, just wait a little bit longer, have a little bit more patience than I have. And you can paint the trees however you like, however many you like, or you can follow along with what I'm doing. And I have one just coming out here from the side. Maybe one more. These trees you don't want to extend all the way to the bottom. I mean, you can, but we're going to be painting sort of like a hill here. So part of it is going to be covered up. And I very often use white acrylic paint to achieve certain white details because it's much easier to just paint over it afterwards. And white watercolor just isn't opaque enough. You can be really expressive with your trees. Paint on as many branches that you'd like. Generally in my videos, in my past videos, I would kind of skip this part. I would show you how to paint just a couple of them and then I would fast forward. And I might do that again because it's pretty self-explanatory. After one tree, it kind of becomes pretty redundant. let me know what you think about that. But so my favorite brush that I use for this sort of detail work is a quadruple 0 Winsor & Newton, which is linked in the description of this video. This one is a double 0 by Winsor & Newton, but the other one, the quadruple 0, I've been using that one for a really, really long time, and it's an excellent brush. It really does the job. It's you don't really need as steady of a hand. It's an excellent brush to learn from as well. So I highly recommend it for detail work, such as tree branches. And we're just going to be extending these tree branches all the way from the bottom to the top, because we want the bottom portion to look very bushy. So I realize that this is probably going to be quite a time-consuming part of this painting, but take your time. It's not supposed to be quick, right? Just all a learning process. So yeah, I'm just gonna fast forward this part, but you can just continue on with these trees doing exactly what we're doing. And then as you get closer to the center here, you're just gonna make them much shorter. So maybe that height and a little bit more gray than the black that I just applied, just to make them look like they're very far away. Okay, so we're just going to add some black features here at the bottom. This is just sort of going to define the horizon line almost. So you don't want to paint necessarily a solid line going across the entire horizon there. You just want to dot some random portions on and define, rocks or other kind of sections of snow, I suppose. It just adds a really nice dimension to your painting, and it really nicely separates the horizon from sort of the rest of the snow. The other thing that we're going to define is the edge of our little river. Of course, rivers are not 100% flat. There's sort of a, they sink down a little bit, so there's sort of a river bank. So we just want to define that little indentation, I suppose. Kind of lacking vocabulary here. So you're just going to roughly outline the parts of the river that are kind of exposed to the viewer. So up here it'll be more prominent, but obviously the further that it gets away from the viewer, the less intense that indentation is. So this is, for example, way too intense, but that's okay. We can lightly define this area here, but we don't want to go as intense as this side because this isn't technically exposed to the viewer. So you just kind of want to almost dot it along. Okay, so now we're going to be applying a lot more of the white accents. So we want to really bring out the snowy atmosphere of this painting. So we're going to fill in a lot of these cracks with white and also apply some white onto the trunks of the trees to make it look like it's, it's snowing heavily, or there was just like a really heavy snowstorm, something along those lines. So you can be quite liberal with this. because we want it to look like a snowstorm. In my opinion, this is what really kind of brings the magic to the painting, because before it just sort of looked like a cold winter landscape, whereas now it's like a cozy snowstorm feel. I'm almost tempted, yeah, I'm just gonna go for it, to almost just streak upwards like this with my paintbrush, just to fill in some more of that white space without putting too much effort in, to really make it look like a cold atmosphere. I don't know where you guys live, but here, at least when it's super cold in Canada, like the other day we had -26 or something like that, everything looks frostbitten. It's like it has this white layer, but it's not really ice. Well, I guess it's sort of ice that's on it, but it just looks very still, and that's kind of the look that I'm trying to achieve by doing what I'm doing now. So yeah, I like that a lot more, by kind of covering it first and then going in with the opaque definitions of the tree trunks, or on the tree trunks rather. By the way, this is how I ruined my watercolor brushes. By using acrylic paint and just really moving them in every single direction. So I don't recommend doing this with any of your good watercolor brushes. Maybe use kind of a throwaway acrylic brush or an old brush. Or just buy an acrylic brush. So like I said in a previous video, when I paint these paintings, I'm painting them for the first time as well. So a lot of it for me is also experimentation and just kind of seeing what works, what doesn't. And with these live painting videos, I can't just sort of cover up something that I did that I didn't like or exclude it, because it's all part of the audio, right? But I just want to define some more of these kind of rocky edges and the horizon lines and so on. Just what I'm going to do is take my acrylic paint and just fill some of this in to make it look very snowy. Oops, too much. And actually I am going to paint a little rim of snow here. See, you can pretend these are reflections or actual like snow on the ice, but I'm just trying to give this painting a little bit more realism, because our river, it looks very flat, so I just want to give it a little more depth and detail and pizzazz. The other thing I want to do is just very lightly add some of the reflections of the trees onto our river. So you want to make sure you water down your black watercolor as much as you can for this part. And we're also just going to add just some little grass patches coming out in random places just to give it a little bit more detail. And that's basically it. I mean, you can just keep going with the details and adding more tree branches and so on, but that's the gist of it. I'm just gonna peel the tape off because this is always extremely satisfying. But there we have it, our little winter landscape painting. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe if you did, and I will see you in next week's video.